You're a pathetic little kid that is desperate for attention and popularity, with an unhealthy amount of time spent trying to gain as many friends as possible, that panders to people that hardly anyone takes seriously. Do you think you're actually fooling anyone about the angry Canuck? I don't think he takes himself seriously. That changes position at the drop of a hat when it is most convenient. That appeals to tolerance and pluralism when it serves the purpose of legitimizing Group X while simultaneously demonizing Group Y with a series of misrepresentations and overgeneralizations. That engages in rants against morality and puts on the facade of not being dogmatic while simultaneously proposing absolutist normative premises about property, and while clinging to dogmas that come straight from the Mises Institute, smash the Mises Institute, that uses some of the exact same dishonest tactics as Stefan Molyneux while simultaneously being a Molly critic, that ostracizes and silences people for persistently disagreeing with you and switching from him to you, okay, and calling you out on your bullshit. That panders to assorted nationalists and conservatives by essentially tricking them into thinking that they can switch labels without changing any of their most fundamental views and pass themselves off as not being authoritarian on such a basis. That sees an anti-statism only a means to whatever esoteric end one wants. That clings to the failed ideas of logical positivism and scientism. Overall, obviously, is incredibly confused about their own identity. Woo! That was a PM from Brain Police. And yes, that was all one sentence. Wow. Pathetic little kid. Alright, well, let's just go through this. You're a pathetic little kid, blah, 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 blah. Alright, this is Mr. 28 years old, lives at home. Yeah, I'm a pathetic little kid. With an unhealthy amount of time spent trying to gain as many... Nope, I don't spend that much time at all. I actually have a program. See, since I have a job and I have money, I can buy stuff like this. And so I just bought a friend at her, and I really don't spend much time at all. It's all automated. Not all automated. I have to gather and stuff, but it's really a small amount of time that I spend doing that. That panders to as many people. Nope, no pandering. Pandering, that's a political term. I don't engage in preferential advocacies, so I'm not pandering, right? I'm just saying, get your guns out of my faces, and we're all square. So pandering, that's an old concept that comes from, that comes from the old ways of thinking, the old ethical, political, preferential correctness way of thinking. You think you're actually fooling anyone about the angry Canuck? I don't think even he takes himself seriously. I'm not trying to fool anyone. I made the video. Remember, I made the video. What was the title of the video? The title of the video was To Sarahan 06. Right? I was fishing for a response from Sarahan 06. What I wanted to see was Sarahan, make a video, go, oh God, or something like that. I wanted to see how Sarahan would respond. I actually didn't really know how Sarahan would respond, and he ended up not really even responding at all. He commented on the video, left some comment, I don't know. I forget what he said, but he didn't really respond to it. And so I was just fishing for a response from Sarahan. That's all I was doing with that. So yeah, I mean, it's not some great overarching ideological outreach program. Anyway. But yeah, the Angry Canuck is a troll. He made that video about the Holocaust, like, welcome to the ghetto. This is the ghetto. And then he talked about the Holocaust, like the Warsaw Ghetto. Yeah, yeah, he's obviously a troll, and like really, and I understand the word troll is abused, but he's obviously a troll, but he also has his own beliefs. Like, trolls are people too, off the webs. They're people too, and they have their own beliefs, and so he has his own belief. And I don't know if he's just trolling me or whatever, but anyway. That changes positions at the drop of a hat when it is most convenient. Well, it would be pretty fucking convenient to give up free association right about now, and to go ahead and go all on board with leftist totalitarian, no non-aggressive right-wing preferences allowed kind of thing. That would be very convenient for me. So that appeals to tolerance and pluralism only when it serves the purpose of legitimizing Group X while simultaneously demonizing Group Y, with a series of misrepresentations and overgeneralizations. You started the fire. I mean, you started this whole thing, and you've been putting way more effort into this whole thing than I have. I've been doing all this on secondary accounts because, well,
one, I don't want my main account to get banned. I've already had one strike against this RazXL account. And two, because I want to keep my main account, focused on important issues, all right? And you're not really an important issue. You're a pain in the ass, is what you are. And I know, like a while back, I forget the precise wording on it, but you basically admitted to being more focused on attacking what you call rightists or conservatarians or reactionaries than you are in advancing anti-statism or advancing libertarianism. You're more interested in bashing people on the inside than you are on actually advocating anything positive. And as a result, you associate with Obama cultists. You're more likely to be on good terms with an Obama cultist than you are with a Misesian, and and so you're not really that big of a deal. And so I really never bothered going after you. And when you spend all this time talking about thick libertarianism, I really didn't pay you much mind. It wasn't until you started to say that that white nationalism is not allowed, even if it's voluntary. It's not allowed, and and that's all this is. This is not me going after Group Y. This is not me, and I didn't even go after the communists. In fact, I even had a rather short and ill-fated outreach attempt to the communists, but I learned pretty quickly that was going to be pretty futile, so I cut that off before it could really manifest. Okay, misrepresentations and overgeneralizations. Oh, poor baby. That engages in rants against morality and puts on the facade of not being dogmatic while simultaneously proposing absolute normative premises about property while clinging to dogmas that come straight from the Mises Institute. No, my definition of property is pretty much, or my explanation of how property comes to be is pretty much just an explanation. I mean, it's just an idea. I haven't seen anyone deny that. All they say is that my description of how ownership emerges it's describing that it's based on belief, and I guess people don't want it to be based on belief. They want it to be based on ethics or something. I mean, this is not. I'm not putting forward an ethical claim to property. I'm just saying how it happens and how the belief comes about. And I'm not even saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that this is what happens. That uses some of the exact same dishonest tactics as Stefan Molyneux while simultaneously being a Molly critic. Okay, and you're a poopy butt too. I mean, that's just like your doo-doo head. You're not saying anything. That ostracizes and silences people for persistently disagreeing with you and calling you out on your bullshit. No, I just block people. I don't silence people. And ostracizes? Are you kidding? You're accusing me of Oh my goodness. But of course you got the blinders on. You're in your own narrow little view. You have no idea. I mean, look at what's happening to me. And so you say that, and anyway. I mean, like what you're doing in your video is you're just going around saying that like all this stuff about race and intelligence is like racist pseudoscience, and you just say that over and over and over again. And what you're doing there is you're tapping into the collective fantasy. You're tapping into to pre-existing beliefs. You're not engaging it. You're not talking about it. All right. I've given you opportunities to engage with it. I've pointed you to my Race and IQ video series, and you haven't bothered responding to any of the points in that. You just continue to say it's racist pseudoscience. Right? That's ostracism. That's bullying. That's and you can do that, and you can get away with that because that is the predominant pathology in this late empire. That panders to assorted nationals. Again, panders. No, that's that's old term. Either they're aggressive or they're not aggressive, and there's really not much more to be said about that. If they're willing to keep it to themselves, they're willing to keep it to themselves, and that's really the end of the fucking story. Okay, there's no such thing as ethics, and value is subjective. And people having different values than you does not make them crazy or insane. Maybe if you had a job, you'd fucking come into contact with more people, and you'd be able to realize that. That panders to assorted nationalists and conservatives by essentially tricking them into thinking that they can switch light bulbs. No, it's not tricking them. It's no trick, right? It's the truth. That that sees in anti-statism only means to whatever esoteric end one wants. You got me there. Anti-statism is not the end of history. You got me. That clings to failed ideas of logical positivism and scientism. God. Okay. If you're going to say ethics exists, you got to show it. And scientism, there's nothing other than science. And you can harp all you want about epistemological correctness or epistemological validity, but to try to say that there's got to be something, and you want to put forward an ought, fine, put forward an ought, and maybe you'll get people to agree with you, and maybe you won't. But there's nothing true about an ought, and if you want to derive some end, remember, the ought, it's the ought is thing, and so a critique of scientism doesn't make any sense unless there are some universally agreed upon ends. Anyway, overall, obviously is incredibly confused about their own identity. Well, I'm not even 20 yet, and so I've got time, but I think I'm getting there, all right, and I think I'm, my positions really haven't changed on this matter for the past year and a half. The labels change. I've gone from anarchist to anti-statist, but the position really hasn't changed one iota. So, Anyway, Brain Police, you're a sad, sad little man, stuck in a sad, sad little world, fighting the Misesians, talking about the objectivists and the Molyneuvians and blah, 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 all these. None of these groups really matter. And all you're doing, the sole purpose of your existence nowadays just seems to be to harass me. All right, that's all it is. You're like this 28-year-old little rat fink, all right, whose sole purpose on the interwebs nowadays, it seems, is to harass a 19-year-old who's trying to actually advance something. That's all you are. All right, and it's fucking ridiculous. Anyway. So, yeah, that's Tamapa, the most anarchist person alive, Alex Streckall.